for another episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is episode number 209, being recorded on Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, the last day of March. And it's already starting to feel like spring. A little rainy today, but very nice weather overall. Very warm weather. Not too warm, not too cold or hot. It was the perfect kind of temperature to be out there with a t-shirt on or a long sleeve. Either of the pieces of clothing would have been appropriate for the occasion. So if you're in an area where you're getting very nice weather like this, to make sure you're getting your vitamin D in there, make sure you're getting outside. Even yesterday, very, very wonderful out there. It's the first time I grilled this year, and I was a little underprepared, admittedly, but on a nice day like that, even the setbacks can be all right. The cats are definitely loving the sun coming through there. One of them's looking out there right now. I don't know what he's looking at, but hopefully it's not a ghost or anything like that. Actually, I don't mind if it's a ghost, as long as it's not in here. Speaking of ghosts, actually, funnily enough, last time I was talking about Charlie Kaufman. I was talking about adaptation, and I was mentioning he had a new short film out, How to Shoot a Ghost, with Jesse Buckley and the other actor whose name I don't know. I'm going to tell you that in one moment. That other actor is not coming up right now, so bear with me for just a moment. But anyways, yes, it was streaming on the Criterion channel. Only about, excuse me, only about 27 minutes, but before the credits, it is 23 minutes, and the other actor, I should say, is right there on the poster, Joseph Akiki, whom I was not familiar with. I don't think I've seen him in anything. But it's a Charlie Kaufman film. It's very abstract. It is a bit more accessible than, let's say, something like I'm Thinking of Ending Things or Schenectady, New York. For one, this is a short film, so there is far less room for wandering into the film. You get halfway through maybe one of his other films, not all of them, but something like I'm Thinking of Ending Things, where halfway through you could become possibly frustrated at the ambiguity and at the seemingly contradictory nature of it, the seemingly otherworldly aspect of it, or you can go along with it and try to make sense of it after the fact and just enjoy yourself. It was interesting after that film came out. Hearing some acquaintances talk about it and interpretations being up in the air. Although I think that might be based on a story, or it may be based off a book, to my knowledge. I don't think that was an original. Okay, yes, it was a novel written by Ian Reid from 2016. So I am unsure of the content and the context of that novel, but as a film, I had my own interpretation, which, whether or not it is correct or incorrect, is what I got from the film without having done any further research into it. But speaking of Charlie Kaufman, speaking of adaptations, speaking of all of these films, let's continue on with I almost said the remainder. Definitely not the remainder. The next couple films on my 20 favorite films of the 21st century so far. And funnily enough, in a strange twist of fate, at the beginning of the show, I had mentioned that there was a 2022 film that I didn't know. I knew that I wanted to include on it, but I put that at the front of the show. I said, I'm not trying to go for super, super recent stuff, because I like to have them age. But funnily enough, there was a different 2022 film that actually came to mind after I recorded the last episode. So much so that I ended up taking the former film off and putting this one on, and they only nudge each other just a bit, and I'll explain my reasonings why. But the other film, which was originally on my list, was the latest at the time of this recording from Mia Hansen-Løve, her film One Fine Morning with Léa Seydoux, which I thought was a phenomenal film. It was one that I had seen only once. I have seen only once, I should say, and left such an impact on me. I thought it was such a breath of fresh air, um, in terms of even not even necessarily just contemporary films, but even like with romance as well. It was a nuanced, very morally complex film with Leah Seydoux' character, who is in between her father, who is getting severe dementia and is having trouble even seeing her. I believe it was dementia and possibly even blindness as well. And also this fling that she's having with an old acquaintance and the complexities that come with that, where he has a child, she has a child as well, and he is still married, and the complications that arise from there. It's not melodramatic. It is incredibly mature. It is incredibly thoughtful, and I thought that was just one of the best films I've seen in a long time. And it only just barely lost out to this film. And the reason why I went with the film I'm going to talk about, and you could be saying, Dan, get to the film, but I think context is important. And plus, what's the hurry? Got plenty more films to talk about here. Maybe you could say that's the hurry, but I was thinking about, like I said, I didn't rewatch intentionally rewatch any of these films except for one that I explained at the beginning of the show, the first episode that was not intentional. But this film I've seen multiple times and has been really has stuck with me since I had seen it back in 2022. And when I initially had seen this film theatrically, I think I liked it enough, but going back to it again and again, it's that urge where, I've talked about films in the past that films or music or something that you really have to sit on, that if you ask me or you were to ask someone their immediate thoughts on it, it's going to be different than how they feel in a year or so, positively or negatively. I mean, rarely do you feel exactly the same on a film or on a piece of media. And when I say exactly the same, I mean identically. If there's a film that you don't like, maybe you start to see some aspects of it that you didn't appreciate before, or vice versa, or a film that you originally liked a lot, and then the cracks start to show. But anyways, so I'm already talking too much for this one. But the first one here, the next film on this list, the feature film directorial debut of Charlotte Wells, a Scottish filmmaker. Her film After Sun with Paul Mescal and Frankie Corio. Yeah, After Sun. This was a talked about film when it released, and like I said, I had seen it theatrically, and I liked it well enough, but I didn't get a strong reaction to it, and I just sat on it. I sat on it for a while, and I just kept thinking about it, just replaying scenes, and so I ended up before it had a U.S. Blu-ray, I imported the movie Blu-ray, and I watched it again, and I watched it again and again. I think I've seen this film 6 or 7 times now. I don't know, but it's one that at a certain point, maybe on the third viewing, a second or third viewing, where it all kind of clicked. And then once it clicked, it all sort of came together. It's a film that really kind of works. The fact that it didn't work as well the first time really kind of ties into, ironically, sort of part of the meaning of the film. Let me get a sip of this coffee. We'll talk all about it. I also like how IMDb lists it as a genre of epic. It is an epic film, along the lines of other epic films like The Dark Knight and The Lord of the Rings. This is an epic film. After Sun follows young Sophie, played by Frankie Corio, who is on a holiday with her single father. And I forgot where they were taking a holiday in. And the thing with the film is that it's very light on plot, because we'll get sequences where we'll see well, I don't know if it's not repeated sequences, but we get the impression that someone is watching this footage. Because Paul Mescal, he's walking around, and actually, I'm sorry, I think it was Frankie who was walking around with this camera, and she's recording her time with her dad, and seemingly banal sort of big sequences, big emotional sequences are not there. It feels very honest. It feels very nostalgic. Not even just because of the camera quality of it, the mid 2000s, but it is the more that we learn about what's going on, the more dots that we are connecting between this character of Sophie looking back on this one time that she had with her father. And I think that after you watch it the first time and you get everything, watching it again and again almost feels as if you are the one watching this old VHS footage, because there is cracks that start to form that become more obvious on multiple viewings. We start to see Sophie is, coming of age. She starts to, she's not antisocial, but she seemingly at this place doesn't really have a lot of people to talk to. She's trying to kind of get herself out more. Caleb, played by Paul Mescal, he's drinking more, but it's not very obvious. It's one of these things, like I say, when you rewatch, you start to notice some more parts where he's on his own, or he's drinking, or he's very energetic, and then other times he's very somber, he's very distant. There's one thing that I find so one of the things that I love about this film, and like I said with One Fine Morning as well, neither film has the big dramatic trailer moment, and you know what I'm talking about. And it's such a plague on contemporary dramas where you have to have the scene where there's the part where they go big. They have to yell their dialogue. It is the big scene when I am proclaiming the drama in this drama film, and you know that this is a serious scene because I'm yelling my dialogue. And I can't even tell you the amount of modern dramas I see that have to have the trailer scene. There's one film that I won't say that I think is the most egregious example from a couple years ago that I always think of and I always go back to, by a filmmaker that I like quite a bit. But this film is everything I don't like about modern dramas, because every scene is the trailer scene. And this film completely avoids that. When there is friction, it is handled in a realistic way. There's one great scene in the film when there is a rift between them. They are at a karaoke event, and Caleb is drinking more. He was supposed to get on stage with Sophie to do this song, but he's not getting up on there. He's just not having it. And you just see the fracture that's going on, not just between these two characters, but between Paul, or I should say Caleb, and himself. He'll go off and wander off without a care. Let me rephrase that. Not without a care, but he will wander off by himself, unconcerned in that moment where Sophie is. And Sophie will go off on herself, not even necessarily looking for him specifically, but going off and meeting other people or doing her own thing. And there is never that big scene. There's never that big moment where these issues are confronted. It's the same way where if you look back on a relationship with somebody, and you can think back in retrospect about all the red flags, all the cracks that were there. And in real life, you probably won't have that big, I can't believe you've done this. This is and it's not as common. You look back and you go, yes, that was it right there and there and there. The two of them work so well together. I've said before, Paul Mescal is one of my favorite working actors. The History of Sound was just one of my favorite films of last year. I think he's just such a terrific actor. But on rewatch, just being able to appreciate the quieter moments in this, even just little moments early on when they're playing pool, and even some of the other side actors, they're playing pool, and one of them accidentally swears, and it's just the way those actors go about it. We're like, oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to swear, and then it's just, nope, you're good. It's the little moments like that you almost kind of take for granted. And of course, the third act, when it could have very easily become something bigger that it doesn't go to. I think there doesn't really need to be much, in the same way that Zodiac perfectly used hurdy-gurdy man, and I don't. It's going to be a very, very hard challenge for anyone to use that song better since the same way with Under Pressure in this with by David Bowie and Queen. It really is kind of tied to the film with what they do with the song, and that whole sequence is just so powerful. With the audio mixing, with the visuals, they keep cutting back to this sort of rave, this nightclub that Caleb's at, and how it all ties together at the very end. It is such an engrossing and heartbreaking film. It's such an emotional film, while never ever falling into the prey of what another film could do. We just look back on these moments of these two, of something simple like just grabbing a drink in the middle of the day, or playing an arcade game with somebody that you'll only see on vacation. Um, it's one that, yeah, subsequent reviewings, it just hits harder and harder every time. And I haven't watched this probably in about 2 years or so. Because there was a point, man, I was just watching it again and again. And that's why I kind of gave it the leg up over One Fine Morning. On top of having just a stronger, kind of visceral, emotional reaction to it, I think that just what Charlotte Wells does in this film by somehow creating these banal, seemingly forgettable moments and having it tie in just so brilliantly without having to be overt about it. Because, yeah, these are two characters that are going through transformations in their lives. Paul Mescal, his character, is going through his own issues in his life, and Sophie herself has to sort of learn who she is as a person. And what I'm glad is that when they do kind of wrap that up in a way, but very briefly. There's only one scene at the very end where they kind of tie it to modern day, and that's all you need, and it's just perfect. I think they actually may have can't speak. They may have done it three-quarters of the way as well. I don't remember exactly. But such a powerful film, such an emotional film. Charlotte Wells, just this has got to be one of just the strongest feature film debuts in a long time, man. This is, if you want to look at like the best, excuse me, the best modern debuts. This is definitely on the list. And this is she hasn't done a film since, and I think I'll be very curious as to see what she does after this. She's done a couple short films before this. She was a producer on a handful of shorts, including her own. But with this, I mean, it got a lot of attention, and this was the best film that year, unquestionably. I'm trying to think what else even. It doesn't matter, but either way. Well, without thinking about it too much, I can say it's the best film that year. But now I got to think about it. So, but anyways, it's the one that I have thought about the most, one I've gone back to the most. Just an incredible, incredible, heartbreaking, touching film. Loved it, loved it, loved it. That's After Sun. And what do we got next on here? Well, we're gonna kick it back to 2007. A filmmaker who I've talked about quite a number on this show, and for me, this is one of the best modern filmmakers. He came out of the gate in 2000 with the film Chopper, and his follow-up film from 2007, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. This is written and directed by Andrew Dominic, like I've said. Came out of the gate with Chopper, followed it up with this film, and then followed it up with two of the most underappreciated films of the last century. Killing Them Softly and Blonde. Two just terrific, phenomenal films. And his range as a director is completely there. He can something as comedic and dark as Chopper or Killing Them Softly. Something as poetic as this film, and something just as dark and nihilistic as Blonde. He's just, wow, what a phenomenal filmmaker. It's a film that's basically in two halves. We have the title as literal. We have Casey Affleck, I'm sorry. Casey Affleck playing the character Robert Ford, who is in awe of Brad Pitt, his Jesse James. He looks up to him. He is in love with the idea of celebrity and any opportunity he can to be around him and kind of prove himself worthy. He's there. I should also say the cast on this is excellent as well. We have Sam Shepard, who can't be forgotten, Sam Rockwell in a small role. We have Mary Louise Parker. And it's interesting. I remember when this came out, because this clocks in at 2 hours and 40 minutes. I remember everyone saying this film is boring, this film is too long. I knew someone who turned it off halfway. They could not take how boring this film was. And I didn't see this film until much later, and I couldn't even believe some of the reactions that I had. 2007 is just such a strong year for films, and when you have the likes of stuff like No Country for Old Men and Be Blood and Zodiac, and you have this as well, you just start to see the caliber of films that were coming out at this point, where any of these could have been Best Picture. Um, Best Picture winning, I should say. I'm curious, what was nominated for Best Picture that year? I'm going to kind of take a little side tangent here. What? Because that's got to be, okay. Mm, my gosh, what is this? No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, Michael Clayton, Atonement, and Juno? Juno was a Best Picture nominee? That is bizarre. I can't speak for Michael Clayton or Atonement because those are two films I actually have not seen. But Juno, that is bizarre, man. Wow, what were they thinking that year? Unbelievable. Wow, if there was ever a year to have 10 nominations, it would have been that one. Holy moly. That is insanity. Anyways, um, yeah, wow. I kind of can't get over that. Anyways, let's go back to talking about the assassination of Jesse James. Yeah, Casey Affleck is so strong in this film. He would finally win his Oscar for Manchester by the Sea from 2016 or 17. I don't remember exactly when that came out. And he's great in the film. The best scene in the film for me is when they're all around the dinner table. It's probably about halfway through the film or so, and the frustration that we see on Casey Affleck, somebody who feels like they really have no place. They really don't belong. And the idea of celebrity, where Jesse James is so much more than the actual person himself. He is this pop culture, if you will. This idea of you look at him and you go, well, he has to be the person who I think he is, and if he's not, then that's going to be a problem. And it's funny to think that for as derided as a film as Joker Folie à Deux does, that is one of the things I think it did very well. Is the idea of uh, the the idea of celebrity, and what does that mean? And what does that mean if it doesn't meet your expectations? And this film, we have Robert Ford who takes it into his own hands, because the film, in the title right there, the assassination of Jesse James, and from there, what we have is a great second half where Casey Affleck, which that scene as well, I mean, it's been talked about. That scene is so wonderfully shot, this long, encroaching scene. And then finally, when it happens, it's very unglorious. It is very matter of fact, in a way that, you can hear stories about Billy the Kid and these old legends and these great kind of gun battles. And then when you actually have it and you actually push comes to shove, it's really nothing, man. It's just sort of like that, very anticlimactic in a way. Not saying that scene is anticlimactic, but in a ways it kind of is, in an intentional way, that is. And of course, it has to be mentioned the cinematography on the film as well. And I don't know who the DP was on this. I got to look that up. But some of the shots in this are gorgeous against the night sky. There's that great shot that you always see kind of pop up with it. It's in the trailer, it's in everywhere, where you have the light from the crane silhouetting you have silhouetting Jesse James, and it looks beautiful. There's a lot of shots that seem almost kind of out of focus a little bit, but in an intentional way. And of course, I got to say Roger Deakins, the cinematographer on this, and it's gorgeous. This is one of just the best looking films of that year. It just the snowy landscapes, the yellow sort of cornfields, the gray, muted interiors that Casey Affleck is living in. It all is fantastic. And the film is dealing with, like I said, the idea of celebrity and the idea of legend, because there's a certain point when Robert Ford is basically making his living off of the fact that he's the one who assassinated Jesse James, and where that takes him and the trials that it brings him to. In the fact that he is no longer even himself. He is only this identity, in the same way that Jesse James was just that identity. Who is that person behind it? Are you just this figure? Are you just this idea that people have about you? And that's what the film so greatly talks about with both halves. I think this is a film that I always say, I said it with Killing Them Softly and I said it with Blonde, that I think this kind of just came out at the wrong time. Not even necessarily in the case where you have a stacked year like 2007. I actually had another great Western from that year, maybe not great, but I'd say very good, is the remake of 310 to Yuma, Christian Bale and Russell Crowe. But this is one that, now I think a lot of modern audiences have become more accustomed to these longer films, not even necessarily longer kind of dramas, but, you see like the last, like Avengers Endgame was like over 3 hours, and we have, I just saw Project Hail Mary. That was about 2 hours, 40 minutes, maybe like 2 hours, 30, whatever. But anyways, again, when you have these like these long kind of dramas, these long, look at stuff like The Brutalist, which apparently, the Academy was getting in trouble that year for not watching the films with, The Brutalist and Dune Part 2, and it's just ridiculous. But I think that this was a film that just came out at a bad time. Not even necessarily that people were not watching longer films. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But at least on a wide scale like this, when I remember just my own personal thing, just everyone telling me how boring this was, how like dull this was, and when I finally saw it, I just couldn't believe my ears. I'm like, did we watch the same film? I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is so enrapturing. Enrapturing? That's not a word. I'm losing my mind, guys. It's just so engaging. Just the like I said, the two halves, the back and forth between Casey Affleck and Brad Pitt. This is just so well put together, and the colors of the film I mentioned before, the cinematography, and man, I just love. I know it's redundant to say, but I really do love this film, and I think this is Andrew Dominic just firing on all cylinders. I really hope we get another film from him. He's just 4 for 4 for me, 4-0, I should say. Brilliant film. This needs like a Criterion or something. The fact that this doesn't have the same kind of well, then again, I guess There Will Be Blood doesn't really have a big kind of good release either. That's also kind of stuck on Blu-ray. Anyways, Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward, Robert Ford. Brilliant film, one of my favorite westerns overall. It has that same sort of revisionism as something like Unforgiven. Unforgiven, looking at what happens to an Asian gunfighter, and in a lot of films that have done that. Look at something like The Gunfighter with Gregory Peck, but especially in that film, in terms of Clint Eastwood's career, sort of like what happens to this kind of character after they get old, or when they get old, and the blood isn't flying anymore. It's the same thing here. This revisionist of sort of demystifying the legend and the disillusionment of being famous. Terrific film, and that is where I am going to wrap up this one. Again, only 2 films, but 2 great, great films. 2 great films about subtlety. Crazy how far that'll go and get you. But that'll do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching if it's on YouTube. I'll be back soon with another episode. And until then, take care.